Hey guys, welcome to another video. And in this video, we will tackle the listening section of the TOEFL exam. Are you struggling with the listening part of the TOEFL exam? Are there different topics like maybe science or history or literature or art that you have no idea about? Well, if that's the case with you, don't worry. In this video, we will discuss 5 tips to pass the listening section, but also we're going to take it together just to make sure that you understand those tips. You ready? Let's get into it. If you don't know me, I'm Reggie Scales from North Carolina, and I have 10 years helping students from all over the world to improve every aspect of the TOEFL exam. I've even helped some students go from beginner level listening all the way to getting a 29 on the listening section of the TOEFL exam. Do you think you can do the same? Well, don't worry. Start your journey with this video. The first tip is if you can follow a story in chronological order. That basically means, do you understand where the story begins and where the story ends? So every question will be in order, and also every answer will be in order. So that means if you're at the beginning, or basically in question 1, and one of the answer choices you heard at the end of the lecture, well, that answer choice is wrong. And that also means if you're on the last question, and one of those choices that you can choose from is from the beginning of the lecture, well, that also means that that answer choice is wrong. All of the answers will be in order. They will never deviate from that. Tip number 2, please make sure to take notes. I know a lot of you say that you can't take notes and pay attention at the same time. I know that can be a bit difficult sometimes, but if you don't take notes on the listening section, you will miss very easy questions. So I'm going to show you in this video how to make a template, how to take notes with that template while listening so you won't get distracted. Tip number 3, you need to know how to take notes. In the listening section, they really love to repeat the same word maybe once, twice, or even 3 times. If you ever hear that they are repeating a word, that should let you know that that is a subtopic. They're going to ask you a question about that. So on your template, you're going to write down the subtopic. If you do that, you're going to realize that when you're answering questions, you're going to see that subtopic, and it's going to be easier for you to remember what they said about it. Tip number 4, pay attention to the first and last sentence of the audio. As you're taking notes and listening to the audio, you will see that there's going to be a timer counting down so that you know basically how long the audio will be. So the very first sentence that they say and the very last sentence that they say usually is a question in the exam. So what does that mean? Basically, as soon as the lecture starts, you're paying attention, you're taking notes. You have to be focused from the beginning to the end. And finally, tip number 5. If you're listening to a lecture, the professor usually will be talking, and sometimes he's talking to the students that are in his class. If you're listening and he's talking to a student in his class about a different topic or subject that's interesting to him, sometimes the students will interrupt the professor and they will ask a stupid question that is usually wrong. I'm sure you've heard that before. And the professor will say, well, it's not actually what you think it is. When the professor corrects the student, pay attention to that because his correction will be a question in the exam. Okay, so if you need to review those tips, pause the video, check the tips that we were talking about today, make sure you understand them well. And if you're ready now, let's do the test together.
Listen to part of a lecture in an archaeology class.
A popular misconception about archaeology. Some people imagine we just go out into the field with a shovel and start digging, hoping to find something significant. Well, while there is an element of luck involved, we have an array of high-tech tools to help us figure out where to concentrate our efforts. One of the newer tools actually relies on particle physics. Talk about interdisciplinary. Here's a machine that brings together 2 very different sciences. This machine is called a muon detector. Muons are subatomic particles that result from cosmic rays. Okay, let me start over. Cosmic rays aren't actually rays. They're basically protons zipping through outer space at close to light speed. And when they collide with the atoms in Earth's atmosphere, they break up into smaller particles, muons. Now, these muons are still highly energized, so they can easily pass on down to the Earth's surface. In fact, they can pass through solid matter, so they can also penetrate deep into the surface. And it's this property of muons that archaeologists are taking advantage of. Let me explain. With the right kind of equipment, scientists can use muons to create a kind of picture of the structures they're studying. Let's say we're studying a Mayan pyramid in Central America, and we're interested in finding out if there are burial chambers or other rooms inside. Well, a muon detector will show a greater number of muons passing through the less dense areas inside the pyramid. Yes, Andrew.
I'm not sure I get how this muon detector works exactly.
Well, muons lose energy as they pass through dense material, like the stone walls of a Mayan pyramid. So more muons and more energetic muons will be passing through empty spaces. The muon detector can differentiate the areas where more muons are passing through, the empty spaces, as well as where there are fewer muons, the walls and dense areas. These empty spaces will show up as darker, so we wind up with a kind of picture of the pyramid and its internal structure.
A picture?
Sort of like an X-ray image.
Okay, so if we see darker areas inside the pyramid, we assume it's an empty space with more muons.
Exactly. With this technology, we can see what's inside a structure before we dig, so we know exactly where to explore, and we can minimize the damage excavation can cause. Even a little damage could result in our losing vital information forever. Now, muon detectors have been around for some time, but they've been improved upon since archaeologists started using them. In 1967, a physicist placed a muon detector beneath the base of one of the Egyptian pyramids at Giza, and he was looking for burial chambers. Now, it happened that the muon detector found none, but he did demonstrate that the technique worked. Unfortunately, the machine he used was so big that many archaeologists doubted muon detection could be practical. How could they get a massive piece of equipment into, say, the jungles of Belize? Then there was the issue of range. The machine used in 1967 could only scan for muons directly above it, not from the sides. So it actually had to be put underneath the pyramid so it could look up. That meant if you wanted to find out what was inside an ancient structure, you'd first have to bury the detector beneath it. There's been a lot of work on these machines since then, and these problems have been solved by and large. That's not to say the technology is perfect. It would be nice, for example, to have a system that didn't take 6 months to produce an image. I suppose that's better than the year it took for the 1967 study to get results. But still, well, there's good reason to believe that with better equipment, we're going to see muon detectors used much more frequently. They're already being used in other areas of science. For example, Japanese scientists studying the interiors of volcanoes, and there are plenty of archaeologists who would love to use this technology.
What is the lecture mainly about?
Okay, I'm sure you took really good notes on this listening section, and let's see how you do on the test. I'm going to do it with you. So each question, just pause the video before you hear my explanation and you'll see how you do. We're taking it together. Okay, so this is the first question. So we got 2 options. Usually the answer is in the beginning of our notes, or if like this question, it says, what is the lecture mainly about? The answer is the option that is all over our notes. Not just the first sentence, but all over our notes. So let's see the options. Misconceptions about muon detectors. They didn't talk about why it was wrong, so maybe not. An investigation of an Egyptian pyramid using a muon detector. Well, that pyramid option was in the middle of the lecture, so that can't be here because we're in question 1. The collaboration between physicists and archaeologists in the development of the muon detector. Again, that's just one part and it's not in the beginning either. But either way, we're choosing the main options. So we need the option that's everywhere. And benefits that muon detectors can provide archaeologists. That's the answer because that's the one that they talked about the whole time, the benefits that the muon detectors can provide. All right, let's go to question 2. And we should know that we're a little bit farther along. Okay, so let's check out question 2.
What aspect of muons is most useful to archaeologists?
Okay, so pause the video again and you check out what you think the answer is. Once you choose an answer, press play and see what you get. All right, the first choice, their ability to carry information from outer space. They didn't talk about that at all. We do not have that in our notes. Their ability to break down cosmic rays into smaller particles. Well, if you look at the notes here, we saw that muons actually are broken into smaller particles. That's what muons are, so this is incorrect. Number 3, their ability to pass through solid matter. That's what muons do, so I'm looking at this one mostly. And their ability to change the color of some surfaces. We don't have that in our notes at all. Okay, so we're gonna lock in answer choice 3 and we'll see how we do at the end. All right, so let's move on to question 3.
According to the professor, what information can a muon detector provide about an ancient structure?
All right, so pause the video again, choose your answer, and we'll see how you do. All right, you ready? Okay, so we're in question 3, so we should be around the middle part of our notes because this is halfway through the questions. Let's check them out. The internal temperature of the structure. Our notes don't have anything about that in the middle section of our notes or anywhere in our notes. The location of rooms within the structure. Our notes do talk a little bit about that. That's what muon detectors do. They can scan inside a building like an X-ray, and it can see what inside of structures look like. But let's keep checking for the other ones. The age of the structure. Our notes don't have that. The materials used to build the structure. All right, so the materials part could be tricky. Muon detectors go through materials to see what's inside, but we don't know actually what the materials are. So we're going to lock in answer choice 2, and we'll see how we do at the end. All right, let's go to question 4.
Why does the professor discuss damage to archaeological sites?
Okay, pause the video again to see what you get. All right, guys, you ready? Okay, so we're in question 4. So that means that we're in the middle, towards the end of the middle of our notes because we're almost done. We're almost at question 6. So let's check the options. To indicate a benefit of using muon detectors in archaeological research. We do have a little bit about that in our notes. That's what muon detectors do. Let's see the other options. To describe an accident with a muon detector during a pyramid excavation, that's a trap. They never talked about an accident. Actually, the muon detector is to avoid accidents, if you remember that in your notes. All right, let's check the next one. To explain how muon detectors are useful in reconstructing damaged sites. Again, our notes say that the muon detectors are used to avoid damage, not to reconstruct it. So that's also another trap. And the last one, to explain why muon detectors were not often used in the past. Why did the professor discuss damage to archaeological sites? No, it didn't talk about causing damage in the past either. So the only option that I think is correct is the first one, to indicate a benefit of using muon detectors in archaeological research, because that's the main idea anyway. So we're gonna lock in answer choice 1 and we'll see how we do. So let's go on to question 5.
In what ways are modern muon detectors different from muon detectors used in 1967?
Oh, looks like we have 3 answer choices to choose. So first of all, we're in question 5 of 6. So that means that we're towards the end of our notes as well. Maybe that can help you out a bit. All right, so the ways that modern detectors are different from muon detectors in the past, let's find out. Modern detectors are less expensive. I don't remember writing that in my notes. Actually, I'm checking my notes right now and it's not in my notes. So let's see the next one. Modern detectors use less energy. Didn't have that in our notes either, especially towards the end here. This might be weird, but the first 2 sound wrong. So let's check out the last 3. Let's see. Modern detectors are not as large. Actually, I didn't have that in my notes either. Personally, maybe you got it, but we only got 3 left. So let's see the other 2. Hold on. Modern detectors take less time to produce an image. Yes, That is in my notes towards the end. They take 6 months. They used to take a year. Modern detectors can scan in more than one direction. Yes, that's also in our notes. That's something that the old ones couldn't do. Well, for sure, I know that less expensive, did not write that, and they use less energy. They didn't mention that at all. And actually, as I'm thinking right now, modern detectors are not as large. In my notes, I do have that they couldn't take it as far as they can now in the past. Maybe that's because it's large. So I'm gonna take an educated guess. So I'm going to choose the last 3. That seems weird, but those are the only ones that make sense. And we'll see how we do with that one. Maybe you got the same thing that I got. Let's see. All right, well, we're almost done with this one. So let's check out question 6. And this is the last question of the whole listening section here. So that means that we have to be towards the end of our notes or even the last sentence of our notes. So let's take a look. Again, pause the video to make sure that you answer the question first and see how you do. All right, let's see. Okay, are you ready? Let's check out this one. What is the professor's opinion about the newer muon detectors? Let's see the first option. She appreciates the help they provide despite the time they take to produce images. We have that at the end of our notes. Remember, and you can see here with our notes, it takes 6 months now, and it used to take about a year to be able to get an image. So she liked it, and maybe in the future it will be better. So I'm pretty sure that's the answer, but let's check out the other options. She fears that many archaeologists will be unwilling to use them. No, our last sentence actually says that archaeologists will use them, so that's wrong. She feels that they have greater potential in areas of science than archaeology. That's actually against all of our notes. The archaeologists love it. They provide more accurate information about the age of objects than older detectors did. Well, that's wrong because the muon detectors, the only thing they do are like x-rays, and they scan an image and you can see inside. So the only option we can have here is question choice 1. So we're going to lock that in and see how we did. All right, let's take a look. Oh yeah, oh yeah. You see that? So like it says here, excellent. You're a god of study, all right? So that's one listening down. Let's do another one. If you're enjoying this, stick around. We have one more. Make sure you're prepared for the TOEFL listening exam, all right? You ready, guys? Let's check out the next one.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
And the sea is teeming with tiny organisms, but they don't get as much popular attention as, say, whales. Microscopic algae just aren't as exciting, I suppose. And yet those organisms are the foundation of the bulk of the marine food chain. Without plankton, which is the global term for these tiny organisms, there would be no whales. Plankton is found both in freshwater and marine environments. Again, it's a term we use for any small organisms that float along with the current, either because they're too small or weak to swim against it, or because they don't have any capacity at all to move by themselves. Plants and plant-like plankton are called phytoplankton, while animals and animal-like plankton are called zooplankton. For over a century now, researchers have been trying to solve a mystery about zooplankton. You see, some species of zooplankton migrate, not the way birds do when the seasons change, but daily in a phenomenon we call DL vertical migration, or DVM. In their DL vertical migration, zooplankton swim up near the surface of the water during the night and swim down to deeper water during the day. Depending on the species and region, this can be a round trip of between 100 and 400 meters. For a tiny microscopic organism, that's a huge distance. Remember now, zooplankton can't swim very well, and DVM requires a lot of energy. So there must be an important benefit to this daily up and down commuting. We're not exactly sure what this benefit is, though there are several compelling theories. I'll talk about them in a moment, but first I want to talk about what we do know, or rather what we're pretty sure we know. So, researchers generally agree that the stimulus for zooplankton DVM is light. Zooplankton tend to swim away from sunlight into deeper water where the sun's rays barely penetrate. At night, when the sun no longer illuminates shallower water, zooplankton head back toward the surface. Now, why would light cause zooplankton to expend all that energy and migrate? One popular theory is that zooplankton are hiding during the day from visual predators, those animals that hunt by sight. The darkness provides safety during the day. Then at night, after migrating upward, they have an opportunity to feed on phytoplankton that float at the surface. Makes sense, doesn't it? But what do we do with the data showing that many kinds of zooplankton don't dive deep enough during the day to become invisible to predators? Or that others dive deeper than is necessary to escape hunters' eyes? And that some zooplankton are bioluminescent, which means they have special organs that light up and make them visible even at great depths. Well, despite all this, we believe predator avoidance is a possible explanation because of studies done in freshwater lakes. It turns out there's a correlation between the presence or absence of vertical migration and the presence or absence of fish that find their prey by sight. But what are some other possible explanations? Some researchers suggest that zooplankton migrate to avoid the sun's ultraviolet light. That would explain why some zooplankton are found at such great depths. Visible light may not penetrate very far down, but ultraviolet light can. And we know that some zooplankton have special pigments that protect them from the damage ultraviolet light can cause. That could be why some zooplankton are able to stay closer to the surface during daylight hours. And there's a third theory. Although it takes a lot of energy for the zooplankton to migrate, they conserve energy while floating in deeper, colder water. So while they're not feeding, they're quietly digesting in cooler water. But remember, zooplankton consist of any number of different organisms, from microscopic worms to crab larvae to tiny fish, and they are found in a large range of marine habitats: cold water, warm water, shallow water, deep water. So there may be different reasons for different species.
All right. How did you do with taking your notes? Are you ready to answer? Okay, this question asks, what does the professor mainly discuss? If you need to take your time, again, pause the video to see what answer you get, and we'll see how you did. Okay, well, are you ready? Well, if you notice here, it says, what does the professor mainly discuss? So again, it's not the first sentence this time. The answer will be your notes from the entire lecture that you heard. All right, let's see option number 1. The importance of zooplankton in the marine food chain. Well, we did hear a lot about zooplankton, so actually, let's take a look at that question a little bit more. Let's see the second one first, though. The interdependence of 2 types of tiny marine organisms. They did mention 2, but the whole time we just talked about the zooplankton. A physical feature of zooplankton that makes them well adapted for swimming. We didn't really talk much about physical features of the zooplankton. Let's see the last one. A phenomenon observed in some species of zooplankton. All right, so I'm in between the first one, the importance of zooplankton in the marine food chain, and a phenomenon observed in some species of zooplankton. I'm gonna go with the last one, a phenomenon observed, because they wanna know why they did the deal vertical migration, something like that. And they didn't really talk about them being eaten too much. So let's just go with the fourth one and we'll see. All right, well, let's go to question 2.
Why does the professor conclude that zooplankton must derive an important benefit from deal vertical migration?
All right, guys, so we're on question 2 again. So that means that we're a little bit further in our notes, right? But still at the beginning. Let's see the options. If you need to pause the video, make sure you pause it, choose your answer first, and see how you did. Okay, well, are you ready? Let's check it out. Deal vertical migration uses up a lot of energy. That is in the beginning of our notes. If you remember that in our notes, they said they use a lot of energy. So they have to have a reason why they do that, right? But let's see the rest. Deal vertical migration exposes zooplankton to predators. We did have something in our notes about that. Deal vertical migration prevents zooplankton from being able to digest phytoplankton. We don't have that in our notes. That's not there. Deal vertical migration forces zooplankton populations to live permanently in cold water. That's not in our notes either. I'm in between choice 1 and 2. But I'm going to go with choice 1 though, because that's earlier in my notes. They said they use a lot of energy, so they have to have a reason for doing that. And the second one though, deal vertical migration exposes zooplankton to predators. They did mention that, but about the predator theory, that's a little bit later. So we're in question 2, so usually the questions are in order. So I'm gonna choose that answer number 1. So we're going to lock it in and we'll see how we do. All right, let's look at the next one.
What does the professor imply about bioluminescent zooplankton?
All right, take your time to see if you get the right answer, and we'll see how you did. Okay, well, are you ready? Let's take a look at the question here. We're in question 3, so we should be around the middle of our notes, right? Maybe where those theories are. So let's see here. What does the professor imply about bioluminescent zooplankton? Let's see. Their food source is different from that of other zooplankton. Well, first of all, bio, if you remember, that means that they light up, right? So maybe we should choose something about that. Let's see the second one. They probably do not rely on DL vertical migration to avoid predation. That's a pretty good guess, because if they light up, predators can see it, right? Let's see the next one. They migrate deeper than other zooplankton species do. That's a good guess too, because they light up so they can go pretty far deep. And most species are found in cold water. All right, now let's take a look at our notes to answer this question. Okay, so if you look at the notes here that we took, we're in the middle, right? So we're in the theories part of our notes. And the first theory says that maybe they did diel-vertical migration in order to escape or hide from predators, right? And our notes there have bioluminescent. So I'm going to take an educated guess that that's what he's implying. Choose the second question and we'll see how we did there. All right, let's go to question 4.
Why does the professor mention fish that live in freshwater lakes?
Okay, pause the video and see what you get here. Well, are you ready? Let's take a look. Why does the professor mention fish that live in freshwater lakes? All right, again, we're in question 4, so we should be around towards the middle end of our notes, right? And we have in our notes fresh water, so let's see what we get here. To point out that many aquatic species exhibit DL vertical migration. Well, maybe not, because we're only talking about fish in freshwater lakes. Let's see the second one. To give an example of a species of fish that feeds on bioluminescent zooplankton, we don't have notes about that there. To make a comparison between fish and zooplankton. They did compare them, so maybe, let's see the last one. To support one of the theories explaining why zooplankton migrate. Well, that could be a good guess, because remember, we're under theories and we're still under theory 1, where we have our notes there. So he's talking about this because it supports a theory about zooplankton migrating, hiding from predators. So I'm going to lock in that last one, number 4, and we'll see if we get it right at the end. All right, let's take a look. Let's go to question number 5.
Avoiding predators is one possible explanation for why zooplankton dive so deeply in the ocean. What 2 other explanations for this phenomenon does the professor offer?
Okay, so it looks like we have 2 choices to choose and we have 4 options. Not an easy type of question to answer, but let's take a look. All right, so they dove so deeply in the ocean. First though, pause the video again to choose your answers. Ready? Let's take a look. To avoid ultraviolet light, that's for sure an answer. We have that in our notes. Let's see the next one. To avoid strong ocean currents. We don't have that in our notes. To digest in cold waters. We do have that. In our notes, it mentions that in the cold water, they save energy. So that could be an answer. And the last one, to find abundant food sources. Definitely not an answer. We don't have that in our notes. So let's lock in number 1 and number 3 for sure. That's the answer. And let's go to the last question.
What does the professor imply about the reasons for DL vertical migration in zooplankton?
All right, pause the video and see what you get. All right, guys, so are you ready? This one should be a very, very easy one because of our tip, right? We're in question 6. That's the last question. So it's the last sentence of our notes. Let's take a look. No single explanation for all species can account for this phenomenon. That's for sure the answer, because that's the last thing that we have in our notes. That's the last thing that they said. But let's still check out the other answers to make sure if we're right. Researchers have not been able to propose plausible theories to explain the phenomenon. That's wrong, we have 3 that we wrote down. All individual organisms have several reasons for migrating. All? That's not true, that's a modifier. Anytime you see a modifier like that, that's wrong. Researchers were able to agree on an explanation of this phenomenon after many years of investigation. Again, that's not true because they have 3 theories, which means that they don't agree. All right, so let's see how we did here. Let's check to see our result. Oh yeah, excellent guys. Again, you guys are gods of study. Great job here on your TOEFL listening. All right guys, it was amazing. It was a blast to be able to take the TOEFL listening test with you. We took it together. I know you did a great job. Please, if you have any questions about this test or something you didn't understand, put your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're gonna have many free videos like this, free test that we can do together. And I'll see you soon for the next one. Take care. Well, it looks like to answer these questions, it looks like my dog wants to join us. Come here, Coda. Come on. You wanna say hey to my friends? Hey, Coda, say hey, say hey. Give me a kiss, give me a kiss. Mwah. I love you. Mwah. All right, I'll see you in a little bit.